Welcome, welcome to everybody. We wanted to do these. I would like to say we'd like to do these kinds of interactions with our community and ethnic newspapers frequently, on a regular basis, because I think that you speak to our customers very directly. And so having open lines of communication, incredibly important for us, and we appreciate, please. We really do appreciate having the opportunity to have this dialogue. So I'm going to do a quick presentation of where we are, and then we'll take questions, if that's okay.
Can I just,
please.
if you don't mind, I wanted to introduce John McCarthy as our Chief of External Relations. So John is here with us today. And the only other request is when you do speak, since we're recording it, including for your benefit, if you could just push the little button in front of you so that the microphone lights up the way the chairman's is right now, and that way we can hear you on the recording.
The sign that you're on is red. It's counterintuitive. Also introducing Shanifa Riara, who's Senior Advisor for Communications and Policy and a big piece of our team. Okay, are we ready? Here we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm Jano Lieber, the Chairman and CEO of the MTA. The MTA today is carrying more than 5 million riders a day system-wide. This is a major improvement from where we were 2 years ago at the height of the pandemic, when we were only carrying about 10% on the subways and buses of our pre-COVID ridership. COVID posed an existential threat to the city, but it also posed a threat to mass transit. Today, the MTA has a balanced budget. Through 2025, because of money that came from Washington. Thank you, Chuck Schumer, huge friend and powerhouse representative of New Yorkers in the Congress. But also thank you to hundreds of millions of dollars that Governor Hochul has delivered to the MTA through her budget, the budget that's just being enacted in Washington, in Albany right now. We have a long way to go. We are looking at a substantial multi-billion-dollar deficit. It's a few years from now, but we can't let everyone stop focusing on that. We will need a lot of new revenues to make sure that we don't have to raise fares or cut service or do any of the bad stuff we don't want to do, and we want everyone to remain focused on it. Because New York does need thriving mass transit, our way of life wouldn't be possible without strong subway, bus, commuter rail, and paratransit service. And we're providing a stepping stone to opportunity. That's what the transit is really about. It's not just moving people around. It's a connection to jobs, education, and economic opportunity 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and it most of all is serving the people that you all speak to most directly. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this session to speak directly to you and to your customers and readers. If we're going to make progress on our equity in our society, fairness for people of all communities and all income levels, we need a better mass transit system, safer, faster, and more affordable. The subway gets most of the attention. It's part of New York's image, it's iconic, but the bus system, we cannot forget about the bus system. The bus system is truly an engine of equity, of equality in our city. Buses actually need to be faster than walking. Can we all agree on that? So we are joining Mayor Adams in an ambitious plan to improve the speed of buses. This is really important for outer borough neighborhoods especially. We're going to double the number of bus lanes. You know, those colored bus lanes where the buses have priority. That's really important because unless you have that, then cars block buses and the speeds get slower and slower. We're going to increase camera enforcement. Interestingly, the first time people get a ticket for driving in the bus lane, only 1 out of 5 ever do it again, and only less than 1 out of 10 get a third ticket. So bus lane enforcement with cameras really does work. We want to do more of it. And we want to reconfigure the obsolete route system. It's amazing to say this, but a lot of the bus routes in our city go to trolley terminals or docks or warehouses that don't exist anymore. Just that the route has been there forever. So we are redoing all of the bus route, the network. We did it in Staten Island. It's been a success. It's improved bus speeds. We've done it in the Bronx. We've got everybody's agreement. Now it's going to be implemented in the next few months. And now we've begun a major redesign in Queens, which is probably the most bus-reliant part of our city. The fewest subway lines for the most people. That's just the history of Queens, right? And we need a bus system that is going to move people faster and connect them to subways and commuter railroads and to where shopping and where they're going. We've rolled that new plan out. It's a subject of discussion. It's not the final plan. We're going to have a lot of meetings and community discussions. It's one thing that I hope you'll be able to convey to people who you serve, that the Queens bus redesign is a conversation and it's just beginning. We're going to have 14 different meetings scheduled this spring and summer. And we're also committed to zero emissions buses. Buses are, I always say that mass transit is the antidote. It's the solution to climate change. There's no reason we shouldn't have an all-electric bus fleet. We've committed to achieve that so that buses become even more friendly to the environment. I mentioned that we are, capital program. Remember, the MTA has its operating budget, which pays for all the people and the equipment and the systems that run the subways and buses and commuter railroads every day. But we also have a capital program, which is investment in the physical assets, maintaining all of those tracks and signals and platforms and tunnels and buses, all of that, which you call the capital budget, the capital program. And we're moving ahead on projects that are big and small through the capital program, which is now $52 billion, a 5-year, $52 billion capital program. Most of it is the less sexy stuff, just maintaining the physical system, tracks, tunnels, and so on. But we've been making progress on projects throughout the pandemic, and actually, when there was such low ridership, we accelerated construction work because we could close down bigger areas of stations and have more outages. So we actually accelerated construction work. Look at what we did with we redid the Times Square shuttle. Does anyone ride the Times Square shuttle to get from Grand Central to Times Square? That was the oldest part of the system, and we completely redid it during COVID. If you've gone to Grand Central, upstairs, beautiful Grand Central Station. Downstairs, the subway station's not so great, but we expanded it and completely redid it. That mezzanine that everybody relies on, and we're redoing all of the elevators as well. We brought in some new entrances. Those are our two biggest stations. We did major work during COVID. We finished the L train tunnel. Anybody here have readers that ride the L train? 300,000 people every day. We did it 6 months ahead of schedule, $100 million under budget, and we did it without shutting the L train down. Remember they were going to shut the L train down? We did it without doing that. We did more ADA stations, all the elevators that allow people, older people, people with strollers, people in wheelchairs, the disabled to have access to our system. We did more during COVID than we'd ever done before. We finished 14 stations, and there are another 26 stations that are actually in progress right now. We're a long way from having full accessibility, but we're much, much faster than we ever were before. We also have these couple what we call mega projects that everybody focuses on. Two of the biggest, which is East Side Access. That's the new Long Island Railroad service to Grand Central. Nobody knows this, but there's a brand new railroad terminal underneath Grand Central Station that we built out of rock. Took forever, but it's almost done. It's being finished this year. Third track, which is the expansion of the Long Island Railroad main line. There's much more capacity now in the Long Island Railroad system, and also the ability to do reverse commute. So if you have readers who live in Queens, for example, they could go pursue jobs in Long Island, which may be more convenient. There may be jobs that they pay more. So they will have the opportunity to travel out to Long Island, where before all the trains had to come in. So that's a great thing. We're improving the Long Island Railroad concourse at Penn Station. Penn Station is not Grand Central. It's pretty crummy. But one of the things that we're doing to make it much better is doubling the width of that main public concourse. We're putting 4 new Metro North stations in the Bronx. We're turning that Amtrak line that just flies through the Bronx with people and business travelers going from New York to Boston or New York to New Haven, and we're actually turning it into a commuter railroad so people in the Bronx will have commuter railroad service and cut their commutes in half. And we're preparing to start the second phase of the 2nd Avenue subway, which will take it from 96th Street up to 125th Street and to the center of Harlem. And ultimately, it can continue from there. So all of these projects are moving forward very, very quickly. The bottom line is that we at the MTA know that in the post-COVID era, we're going to have to compete for riders. We have to compete with Uber. We have to compete with City Bike. We have to compete with staying home and not going to the office. So we're trying to make the system a lot more appealing and faster. Another way we're trying to make the transit as attractive as possible is transit fares, how much you pay. Governor Hochul's budget allows it to keep fares flat for the 2nd year in a row. Normally, last year, we would have raised them. Because of COVID, we didn't. And this year, thanks to Governor Hochul, we didn't have to raise them yet again. We've also introduced new discounts. So if you use Omni, does anybody tap? Does anyone use the tap and go system? Now, if you do that in a week 12 times, you automatically get free rides the rest of the week. It's called fare capping. We're also having inside the city, if you have readers who live in neighborhoods that have Long Island Railroad or Metro North service, the Irish Echo, I don't know if the Irish Echo is here, but if you have people in Woodlawn who want to take Metro North and that's faster than taking the subway, it's $5. It used to be that it was much more expensive than the subway. We reduced the price to try to give people more access and better commutes. So all of these different discounts, there's several of them, are working, and people are taking advantage of them. But the other thing is, and I hope that you can get the word out, is there is a city program that says if you're really low income, you can get a half-price Metro card. So people who go in and get, whether they get other benefits, Medicaid, food stamps, SNAP, they can also get a half-price Metro card. It's important to make sure that people know that. It's called the Fair Fares Program, like fair and fares. And it is not as widely used as it should be. We have almost 1 million people in the city who would qualify for this, but only a couple of 100,000 actually use it. It's something that we think is important to make the system more affordable. But I know that many of you are concerned, and many of your readers are concerned about safety. We're intensely focused on this issue. We know that for people to come back to mass transit, it has to feel safe and it has to be safe. But no one's more focused on this than Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams. That photo was from an announcement that they did. I was there with them about the mayor's subway safety plan. As they've made clear, we're going to increase the police's visibility in the system. I hope some of you are starting to see that. More cops are on platforms. More cops are on trains. I've been pushing for that for a while. Under the de Blasio administration, I didn't get much response. We're getting it now. And we're also trying to reach people who are riding around on the trains. We all experience it. You get on the train, somebody's laid out sleeping there who's sort of using it as a shelter. We need to get those people off the trains into services, but mainly you need to get them off the trains. And that effort at the end of the line stations is really underway. I just went to one in the last week or so, and there are people there, there are cops and social workers out there. Everybody who gets off the train, they have to get off the train, and then they're offered opportunities to get into services and so on, to try to have them not be sleeping on the trains, especially in the rush hour when folks are getting on. So we're working on that as well. I've always, I just want to finish by saying, like, I spent 14 years on the rebuilding of the World Trade Center. So you know that I'm an optimist. I believe in New York. I really believe that New York's always getting better. We have incredibly resilient, creative people who have, many of these, supposedly the immigrant spirit of New York, people have overcome so much to get here and to make a life. That I'm always optimistic. The immigrants, in my view, are the spirit of New York and so much of New York's power and success. So I think our best days are yet to come, and I just wanted to, to make sure that we had a chance to have dialogue and make sure that we are reaching your readers and the various communities you represent. So with that, Tim Minton, will you do your MC?
Yeah, I mean,
and help people to ask questions?
Flowing conversation. Go ahead, sir. Just you have questions, just make sure you hit the button. That's great.
Thank you very much.
And please say who you are in case he can't see you all the way, okay?
Thank you very much. This is Manzoor Hussain. I work for a Pakistani American newspaper and TV channel. My question is, during this previous 2 years, how COVID-19, what challenges you faces during these 2 years? And I believe, as you said, that the MTA facing deficit of multi-million, how you 2 billion. I'm sorry. So how you will fulfill this gap? And regarding safety, you were saying safety. So there are certain deaths on this subway. So other than the police, NYPD using cops, what else MTA is trying to reduce these deaths inside the subway stations? Thank you.
Safety and the budget, right? Okay. Well, what did COVID do to the MTA? In 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, our ridership was down by 90%. On the commuter railroads, that was the subways. On the commuter railroads, it was down by 95%. So we were losing $200 million a week. 200 million a week. The MTA is an $18 billion a year company. That's what it costs us to run the subways and buses and everything. And we were losing $200 million a week. Fortunately, and financially, we recovered because money came from Washington. There were 3 COVID relief bills, and there was money for mass transit. But we also survived for another reason, Mr. Hussain, which is that our workers showed up every day, even in the early days of COVID. And this is, really was courageous. When we didn't know how the disease was transmitted, we really didn't understand if you touched something, if you went to a bathroom, what would happen. And they were very courageous, and they showed up every day, and they kept New York going. So even when the trains were almost empty, still we got the grocery workers to the grocery stores, the doctors and the nurses got to hospitals. We know how important that was, and it happened. But the result was the MTA has, as you said, a $2 billion annual deficit because of ridership. The way we're going to fix that, as I've said to the governor and all the elected officials in the legislature, is they need to come up with some new recurring revenue sources. I'm not going to tell them how to do it, but my pitch is I don't want to raise the fares. I don't want to cut service so buses and subways and rail cars come less frequently. I don't want to fire people so we can't do what we already do. We need the state government, all of the officials of the state government, to come up with a plan to help us fill that revenue. Now, that gap may get smaller as riders come back, but it's a big number. That's what we're doing. On safety, what we're doing is it's not all about police. What we want to do is we don't want to criminalize anything, but we do want riders to feel safe and that the environment is safe and orderly. So what we've asked the cops to do is not to arrest people, but to enforce the rules against smoking, using drugs, all the things that are going on that make people feel like it's not a safe place. So it's not about putting anyone in jail. It's about creating a safe environment. Does that make sense? That's really our goal, making it safe and making it feel safe. And part of that is what the governor and the mayor are doing, is to get the people who have mental health issues off the trains and into treatment. That's the other goal.
Just want to observe, we've been joined by two more people. Jano, that's Vernon Verdree of the Black Star News, and this is Pearl Phillip over here at Caribbean American Weekly.
Great.
We're on the record for this. It's informal. We're on the record, okay?
Good. I think that Monica had the next hand up.
Thank you, sir. Monica Adamski, Radio Rampa and TV. We're reaching Polish American community in New York City. Regarding safety, I would like to ask you more about the details. We know that there is also a plan to install some safety measures in the subway. So it's not only about enforcement and police officers, but also barriers at the platforms to prevent deaths that happen, like pushing people to the tracks. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because there was like a trial phase at some stations. Could you please talk, how did it work and what's the plan on that?
Well, sure. Listen, the reaction to that one terrible episode where the woman was pushed onto the tracks. It was so tragic and so horrible. We are trying to but the problem of what we call track intrusions is much bigger than just that one scenario of somebody getting pushed. We had 2,000 instances last year where people got on the tracks, and only 4 of them were pushings. So we have a much bigger problem. We have a lot of people who are voluntarily getting on the tracks, which is crazy and dangerous, and also puts everybody else at risk, right? So we have a broad, what we call track intrusion program that we're trying to institute. It includes experiments with what you referred to, Ms. Adamski, platform doors in a couple of stations. It's very complicated engineering to get it, because most of our elevated stations, for example, can't accept the additional weight. The complicated issues. But there are a lot of other things we can do. We can put cameras on the front of the trains that will see people on the tracks more earlier than the naked eye can see. We can put laser and thermal detection technology so that alarms will sound and people will immediately be informed if people are in the tunnels or in places where they shouldn't be. So we're taking a very aggressive approach to trying all the different ways we can make sure that people do not continue to get on the tracks voluntarily or even, God forbid, as a result of one of those episodes. The final thing I would say is that we have cameras in every station. So if you do something bad, there's definitely some problems with theft and many other crimes in the system, and we're addressing it. But everybody should know that again and again and again, the bad guys, we get good pictures of them, and they get caught. So if you come in the subway and you do a crime, you're going to get caught. So please take our advice, stay out of the subway.
I think was Lotus Chow. Did you want to ask something from Xing Tao?
Actually, she already asked my question, but I have the other question is about people don't pay the fare, because I take Penn Station and subway all the time, and used to be people pay the price, but right now it's a lot of homeless people, they just drum, and then the other normal people always don't pay the fare. So even though the cops arrest them, but because the DA office, this is like a very light crime, so it's like a very contradict, yeah. So what if?
I agree with you, Ms. Chow, that fare evasion is not just a small thing. What's happening is people who play by the rules of all other parts of their life, they see people cheating, they see people jumping the turnstile or going in the gate, and they start to feel like they're suckers. And we have to make it feel like everybody's playing by the rules. So it starts with the police actually enforcing against fare evasion. And the number of summonses they've issued since the beginning of the year, again, this is us working with the mayor, way, way up. I'm trying to remember, but I think they're up by 4 or 5 times what they were last year. So dramatic increase. And what I'm not interested in putting people in jail. I'm interested in discouraging people from doing it. So we are looking. One of the challenges we have is that gate that people go in all the time. It's because of fire safety. We have to follow the rule. That's a rule that you have to have a push door to get out quickly. So we're looking again at how to design the fare array so it is more discouraging for people to have fare evasion. And then we're putting in a lot of cameras. And then we're also, the same people who do the bad stuff on the trains, if we can catch them, frequently we catch the bad guys when they do the fare evasion, and then you find they have a weapon. So fare evasion enforcement is also, it's not just stopping fare evasion, which costs the MTA millions and millions of dollars, but it also stops the bad guys from doing even worse things, the criminals from getting into the system where they could attack somebody or rob somebody. So we are encouraging the police, let's do more fare evasion enforcement, and they're doing it. It's not going to change it overnight, but we have to start somewhere, and we're starting.
And down here you've got El Haji Nato from Sunni Afrique Radio, Jano.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again for putting this together, the multicultural media. I think it's very important. Most of New York are using the MTA, and I'm sure the immigrant also. My question is, you just mentioned it early on, coming to the low fare, that you're saying that most of the people are not really using it because maybe they're not having the information as it should. Are you planning to make sure also that people like our media can have those kind of advertisements so we can let them know what's available for them? I think that would be one of the.
It's a great idea.
Yes.
You know, we need to. We do advertise it on the subways with the media that we control.
Some people
but
don't
I will
even know how
talk
to read.
I will talk to our
Yes.
team about also
Yeah.
getting some placements out into the multicultural media.
Yes, the other thing is like I use the I have my car, but I love using the MTA. I'm one of those New Yorkers just love to use the train.
God
and so
bless
on.
you. We need your business.
Thank you. Coming here at 125th, there was a delay.
Yeah.
From 125th going to 59, they said there was a delay signal problem. And this is something that been going on back and forth. And I happened to witness one time a lady was in the train at the moment where there was signal problem and she just faded away. And there was no doctor around there. Is there something that you guys are trying to do about that? Somebody like me, it really hurts. You know what I mean? So my question is, are you guys planning to do something to see we can have less delay?
Okay.
I think it would be great.
So
Thank you.
for the question, and thank you for your business, like I said. On-time performance of the MTA during COVID was really good. We had better on-time performance. There are lots of ways to measure it, but we had better performance than for a very, very long time. But now there are more people coming back, and that means they hold the doors and things. You know that what happens, it slows the things down. Signals are one way to make sure that we don't slow the railroad down. You asked a very good question. We have old signals, so they don't really know exactly where the train is. So it has to keep them far apart because all it knows is the trains between 125th Street and 120th Street. It doesn't know exactly where it is, so it has to have a lot of room for safety. If you have modern signals, you can move the trains, you can move them much closer together safely. And so we are doing modern signals. It takes a long time and it's very expensive, but we're doing it through the system, line by line, individual choke points. So we have it, modern signals now on the L train. It may not, you sounds like you come from Harlem, but the L train has modern signals. The E train just finished getting it, all of what we call the Queens Boulevard line, and the number 7 train. Really, all lines that have very, very large populations and large populations from outer borough neighborhoods. We're now starting a lot of the lines in Manhattan also, the 8th Avenue line and so on and so on. So it's going to take a while, but if we can install modern signals, we will be able to run more trains safely closer together and have fewer of the problems because they're old, the signals are old, that you talked about. So that's part of our $52 billion capital program is $5 billion for signals. It's $5 billion for signals, big number. No one's ever invested that much, but it's going to take a long time. Okay,
But advertisement?
thank you. All right, we will definitely follow up. I get your message, my friend.
We've got Jacob Kornblue over there from the
Okay,
Forward,
and-
and then we'll come back over
yeah.
here. Jacob Kornblue.
Mr. Kornblue.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I got two questions. One, what role does the MTA play in dealing with the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism and hate crimes? And second, you've spoken about this plan of increasing presence in the train stations and platforms. As a daily rider from Brooklyn, I haven't seen that yet,
Yeah.
especially on more isolated stops than the larger stops. To what point are we expected to see sort of an increase, not only midday, but also early hours of the day and late evening hours, and also not only in Manhattan, but also more outer borough?
So I'm a Brooklynite too, and I ride the Q train. And for the first time in a long time, I saw cops both on the train on the way out and on my platform at night. So it's starting to happen. The other big thing that's going on is the MTA, and the cops are also at Coney Island Stillwell, what you probably know, right? That's a big station that you have 4 or 5 different lines that finish there, and that's one of the places we're trying to deal with the homeless who are getting on the trains. So there's a lot of cops there. What our role is on the issue of both safety and also the hate crimes, but is that we work with the NYPD. They're not our police force. It's the city, it's the mayors, but we're working closely with them, and we're trying to get them to deploy in exactly the way that you're describing. More cops on platforms, more cops on trains, what times of day, and so on. We also are asking them to do more to help us get the homeless off the trains and to create more order and to enforce fare evasion and to force no smoking and no drug use and no shopping carts and so on and so on. So we're asking a lot of the police, but they are responding. It may take a while for you to see it, but they are responding. The hate crimes issue is real. The numbers are not huge, but you cannot ignore them. And it's one of the statistics that we actually track every month, even though it's the NYPD that oversees them. John is just passing me. John, what's the number that you're seeing?
I mean, this is through March 6th, so it's as you say, it's not a huge number, but it's a significant.
Yeah. So we have an increase in hate crimes. That was through March 6th of this year, 23, which is more than it was last year. So it's not insignificant. So there are two things that we do. One, we work closely with the police, and we ask them to respond and go. If they weren't there, we want to go look at. You got to go look at the video and start to do an investigation, try to figure out who did it, and so on. In addition to the work about having more police in the stations and visible in the system, we also need to do more education and advertising through our media, the screens that we have in our stations and on our trains. And then what I do is try to point at hate crimes and make sure that the prosecutors the cops feel that they understand that they have to investigate and try to apprehend the people, and also that the district attorneys feel that they have to prosecute them. So there was the guy, it's a horrible incident, everybody saw it, who attacked a woman with his own excrement, right? But that guy had many crimes, crimes before, and one of them was a hate crime where he went after a guy and actually made anti-Semitic comments. So I spoke out and said it makes no sense to me that somebody like that can just keep coming into the system if they're going to do stuff like that. I would like to be able to ban them. I would like to be able to exclude them from the subway. Whether they do that or take other action or put him in jail or penalize him otherwise, I want hate crimes to be prosecuted, investigated, and prosecuted. And here's why. It's not just a moral issue. The subway is the public space. It's very special because it's where all kinds of New Yorkers come together, all different types and backgrounds, ethnicities, and we all figure out how to get along in this small space. It's special because if you don't feel safe there, you can't enjoy New York. You can't use the job opportunities. You can't get education because you can't move around. So it seems to me it's especially important that we don't let hate and bigotry have a place in the subway system and in public transit in general. Okay?
We've got Javier Castaño, sorry, from the Queens Latino is got a question.
I'm Javier Castaño from Queens Latino. The last time we were invited to this building was August 22nd, 2019. We met with the guy in charge of the One Metro New York. I believe it's Alan Poutre. And he said that program, just before the pandemic, was really, really important. So can you tell us how this One Metro New York is doing?
Thank you for the question. And if Al Poutre were here, you guys don't know him, but you do. He puts on a pretty good show, right? He's a real character.
He retired?
He retired. But so I'm left to answer your question. What you call One Metro New York, Omni, that's the tap and go system. Number one, this is we're all used to the Metro card. I grew up in New York. We used tokens in the old days. It was a big deal when we switched from the tokens to the Metro card. Everybody went crazy, but it happened and it became natural. It will happen also with Omni. This is the tap and go system where you can put it on your phone. You can use your credit card on your phone. You can have a direct account. Or you can buy an Omni card, a little card that has digital information in it, and use that to tap. So there are different ways to use it. We have now about 30% of New Yorkers, of subway riders, are using Omni. It's a little lower on the buses, but it's starting to pick up. The reason it's good is that we can give you discounts very easily based on your usage. And that's what I was talking about before when I said the fare capping system, where if you use Omni and you tap 12 times, starting on Monday, after 12, everything is free for the rest of the week. That's easy to do. And you know what it does? It means that when you walk up on Monday, you don't have to say, oh, I'm not coming to work on Wednesday. How many times? You just tap and go, and the system gives you the best fare. We call it best fare. So that's the idea of Omni, is to be able to be digital, to have people, it's much faster than MetroCard. Fewer transactions, people not standing at the machine, hopefully less drama with machines that don't work and all that stuff, and a digital system that gives people cheaper rides and, takes advantage of digital technology. Does that make sense? Is that making sense? That's the idea. Is we're already at 30%, and it will start to become, we're going to phase out the MetroCard in 2024. So we're not finished with Omni. It's not perfect yet. It's still a process. The software is still being developed. But in 2024, MetroCard's going to go away, and everybody will use Omni. So we want to encourage everybody to try it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Incidentally, you're all invited to come to this building every single month. We do a news conference. The chairman does it on the day of the board meeting. The next one is April 27th. you're all more than welcome. You don't have to wait 2 years to come back to this building.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting our press releases and advisories as to when those news conferences are and you'd like, there are representatives of the press office in the back. On your way out, just give them your information. We'll put you right on the press information,
And,
all right?
and I just want to add that those Omni cards, if you don't want to do it on your phone, but you want to buy a card, a digital Omni card, you can buy those in many places all over the city, at the drugstores, CVS and Walgreens. They all have them. Sometimes they don't know they have them. We're still working on that. But they do have them behind the counter in most places. Next question.
Next one is Liming Wan, right here from the China Press.
So my question is exactly about the Omni card. It's actually very hard to get one, the physical card. Why is it not being sold at the stations? You have to go to 7-Eleven, the convenience stores. And the thing is, even on the MTA website, it gives you a map of the retail locations. A very small number would offer a service to purchase new cars. Most of them just provide like a reload service. You put money into the car, but it's very hard to get the actual car. No station would get you that car.
Juan, I have to say, you focused on one issue that we are trying to fix. You're right. It has been I mentioned it just now for the other question, but it's been hard. The drugstores have not done a good job, and some of it is our responsibility, training their staff so that they know what they have and how to use it. And we're working on that. So it is a fair point. We are trying to make sure that all of these retail locations, there are like 1,000 of them around the city, understand. But in some ways, it's also, most people are choosing just to put it on their phone and to use the credit card and set up a little Omni account. And it's quick and it's easy, and it probably saves you some time rather than going to a store. But we will have the stores, and all over the world, they use drugstores and cigar stores and newsstands to sell mass transit tickets. That's how all over the world, and we're going to do the same thing here.
So this will not be sold in the stations, right?
No, because you know what? We want to get the station agents. We have to work with the union. But the station agents are sitting in their booths, and there's not much for them to do anymore because like 99% of our transactions are through Omni or through the vending machine. So we need to get them out of the booths so they can really be customer service people and help people more. And we're working with the union to accomplish that change.
All right, we got the gentleman right here from the Indian Panorama News. Mr. Sorry. Oh. Apparently he's left, sir. So now we're going to go to Peter McDermott with the Irish Echo.
Mr. McDermott. You bet.
To everybody, thank you. To everybody who helped set it up. Just you talked about the issue of equality, and one of the things, and it's an equality issue, is that people who work later and who go home at, who find themselves on the subway at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, often, not every day, but too often the service is much less reliable. In terms of, I'm not talking about that the train doesn't arrive, but there are too many trains. You mentioned the Queens Boulevard corridor. It's often happens where trains are stacked. So many trains are stuck. It's almost like mud or molasses trying to get the trains moving, whereas the express is completely functional. So who's making the decision that it doesn't take some of those trains out of the local and let people go home? People are sitting on the train for too long. Now it doesn't, as I said, it happens occasionally. It might only happen before the pandemic, it was like once every 2 weeks or something. And I've avoided it. I take that line since the pandemic, since we're easing out of the pandemic. But I've seen it. I've avoided it, but I've seen it, and it's a completely dysfunctional situation, and it's not simply a signal issue. Somebody's making a decision to allow all of these trains stack up like that, and the express to work fine.
Okay, so I can't speak to the specific local condition that you're speaking about, a couple things. One is the bigger issue of how do we develop service plans that really serve, that are aligned with how people are living and working and traveling. It's something that we are spending time on. You may have seen that we just announced a new head of New York City Transit. That's the MTA agency that runs the buses and the subways. His name is Rich Davey. He's from Boston, an Irishman, for your information. Rich said, we need to look because the peaks, it used to be that so much of our travel was right in the peak, but it's leveling off a little bit. So we're going to look again at where where people are traveling more and providing more service. One of I think that the situation that you're describing may also have to do with the way that the New York subway system was designed. When you go to London, all the lines most of them are straight shots. But in New York, we have what you call interlining. So all these, frequently you have different branches and then they connect onto a single line. Look at the A train coming from Queens and so on. And that creates the challenge that you describe, which is you have different trains coming from different lines and joining into a single line. Are they well timed and well staggered? I think that may be the issue you're describing. But the bigger issue is how do we manage service? We look every day on-time performance for each line. We look at the customer journey time. How long did it take a customer to get from where they started to where they were going for each line? We look at whether we ran all the trains that we meant to run, whether we had enough people, which is sometimes an issue. So we look at it very much every day, which doesn't mean we're perfect at all, but we are focused on it every day, and the planning for the new patterns of travel is really going on right now.
Yeah, just for the record, on the issue of just talking to a couple of occasions, I've talked to crew members, and their frustration is the same, and they say, complain. So I'm complaining. I'm not complaining, but I'm just raising the issue. The fact is that they seem to indicate that it's somewhere 2 or 3 rungs above them that the decision was made not to take more trains out of a local corridor and bring it into. But that's just. But I understand that things are improving, and it is also a signal issue and a staggering issue as well.
All right, well, you're about 15 rungs above that right here, so thank you for the question. We've got Vernon Verdree over here with the Black Star News.
Mr. Verdree.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
2 questions. The first one would be about the upcoming development project in East New York, Broadway Junction. How do you see that program coming together from your point of view, and also taking into the fact what the community what the community needs that to be? Just your views on that.
So I'm not driving the development project as much. That's really the city of New York that's driving this question of real estate and housing and commercial development. We have big facilities, though, in East New York. You know this. We have Broadway Junction, right, which is a major hub. We have the East New York Long Island Railroad facility. So we have a couple goals. One is to make all of these facilities ADA accessible. We have too many people in New York, so our focus is on the transportation. Too many people in New York would like to use the subway, whether they're older and they can't get up and down stairs, or their parents with strollers, or they are really disabled in wheelchairs or otherwise. So we want to make Broadway Junction incredibly complicated because of the verticality of that station. We're going to make that station ADA accessible. It's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, but we're going to do it, number one. Number two is, if you may have seen the governor's plan for the so-called IBX, Interborough Express. That's an idea of taking that old, almost virtually unused rail freight line that comes from Bay Ridge in Brooklyn on the waterfront and curves through East Flatbush. It curves through Borough Park, East Flatbush, my neighborhood in Brooklyn, then to East Flatbush, and then on through East New York and up into Queens, ultimately to Jackson Heights, and turn that into a passenger rail line. It's going to take a few years, but we think that having much more options for people to go between Brooklyn and Queens, which is where people are traveling much more, rather than they have to go all the way into Manhattan on the train and then go out or whatever. So more access, more options. Then I think we ought to take advantage of the fact that there's a Long Island Railroad station there and make that whole area much more appealing for transportation, because good development will come from that. If people feel like it's appealing transportation option, and they will take advantage of this idea that you could take the Long Island Railroad from East New York Station and go out to a job in Mineola. Or, all of a sudden you have a new labor market. You can go to school in Nassau County. You can go, there are great, more options, more accessibility. So while we're not in control of the real estate development planning, we will support it, and our role is to make the transportation work better, so people can take advantage of economic opportunity wherever it is. Is that responsive? Okay.
Second question I had.
Thank you.
It goes back again to the business side and this issue of advertising. In the 15 years that I've represented two black-owned publications, the Black Star News and the Network Journal, I think we've only had, between the marketing department and the ad agency, Corey K, maybe only 2 ads in those 15 years. And both of those ads were facilitated with the assistance of Michael Garner, diversity and inclusion officer. How do we get to rectify the situation?
Listen, you're obviously. I'm not surprised that this is an issue for these publications, and I don't know the answer to it, but consider it an IOU that I will look into it and try to address the question. What is the process for getting paid print advertising into community publications? I think it's a fair question. I just don't know the answer right now. Okay.
We have time for one last question. Monica Adamski from Rampa TV Radio to your right.
Monica Adamski from Rampa TV Radio is great, but she already did get a question. Is there anybody who didn't get one yet who needs to ask one? Okay. Monica.
Then I just have a quick question about the G train. Is the only train that serves Greenpoint where we are located. 26% more people are living in Greenpoint now, according to the census. You mentioned there is some improvement coming for signaling. I would like you to ask about that specifically, if you can.
Sure.
Just at the end, if no one else has questions.
The answer is that the G train has really old signals, and we have in the current plan for signaling to replace them. So that is very much part of that signaling plan. But the G train also has I'd like to put a little more service on it, put it that way. It runs shorter trains than the rest of the system, and I think we would all like to have a little bit more service, a little more frequent service than it has now. That's something that's being looked at in this broader examination of service patterns and where we can provide service.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about the crackly audio at the end, folks. That's on us, not on him. If you got a last couple of things you want to say, we'll wrap it.
Listen, I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I think that the strength of New York is in its incredible communities, and you all speak to a lot of those people. So we welcome the chance to have this dialogue. And I'll say, looking at Brother Minton, that we will do it again before the end of the year. Okay?
Love to do it. And remember, if you want to be on that press advisory list, get all the releases, just see these folks over here. If you're not already on the mailing list, we'll get it right to you. You'll know about all the news conferences.
And there's an open question about advertising, and we won't forget to answer, to at least address it. I don't know what the process is, but we'll look into it. Okay.
We'll get back to you. Thanks, everybody. Great to have you here.